Thank you very much. Good morning to everyone. Allow me to react and give my own inputs. The reality of lawfare does not operate in a vacuum. It operates within a system of justice and its institutions that are inherently weak and oftentimes inutile. Close to 30% of our country's courts have no judges. 40% of our prosecution positions in the Department of Justice, 40% vacant. No criminal case can be heard without the presence of the public prosecutor. Which is to say, therefore, up to a certain extent, 40% of your cases are not being heard or being heard so slowly. It takes some 5 years minimum for a case in the first level courts to be adjudicated and disposed with. Tell me, can the poor afford a lawyer for 5 years? Conviction rates in corruption cases in the country is estimated at less than 30%. Compare that to 80% of Hong Kong and close to 90% in Japan. Our judicial system has been in chronic crisis. It is unable to serve the vast majority of our citizens, close to 85% of whom earn 30,000 pesos a month or below. 30,000 pesos a month or below means kapag ikaw ay nagkasakit, you are reduced to poverty. Pag ikaw ay na-aksidente, you are reduced to poverty. Income that is severely inadequate and will lead to immediate and certain penury should illness or injury or calamity befall our people. It is a justice system that is accessible only to a handful. When a justice system is nearly non-existent to an overwhelming number of the population, it cannot hope to marshal support for and expect respect for the rule of law. It is a system of justice that is inherently weak, serves the interests of a very few, and as such is vulnerable to manipulation and machinations of the few, to the detriment of the many. This is the setting by which lawfare becomes possible. Its seeds are from a dysfunctional and antiquated system of justice that has become more or less irrelevant, or worse, a stumbling block to nearly 8 out of 10 or more of our citizens. It is a system that is callously undemocratic and horribly anti-poor. If we liken a country to a computer system, the justice system is the country's operating system, while health, education, investments would be its software. No matter what the software, if the operating system does not work, the entire system will not work. If meaningful access to the operating system is limited to a few, the rest given token access, if at all, how sustainable can that system be? Unsustainable, weak, unworkable, prone to abuse. And this is where lawfare is able to thrive. We are facing mass murder. Some will call it EJKs, some will call it killings, but it is mass murder. In the context of what is happening today, we have to ask ourselves, where do we stand in the face of mass murder? And where does the law stand in the face of mass murder? I share the view of Dean Agabin. The law precisely can be used as a weapon. And it has been used as a weapon for the last 3 years. I recall, if I'm not mistaken, was it Senator Jokno who said it, that when the levers of power are concentrated on a few, justice and the rule of law are not necessarily synonymous. In a system of justice that is dysfunctional, lawfare will thrive. Strategically, we have to modernize our justice system. Strategically, we have to increase our judiciary budget. The combined budgets of the DOJ and the judiciary is not even 2% of our 4.1 trillion budget. We must increase our conviction rates. We must reduce the shelf life of cases in our courts. We must fill up the vacancies in our courts and our prosecution service to speed up the system of justice. Mass murder has made possible precisely because the system of justice has not been able to punish more and punish swiftly. And it will not go away unless we address that squarely. The call to action is that democracy is not a spectator sport. If I'm not mistaken, it was the director, Michael Moore, who said that. Democracy is not a spectator sport. We are all participants in this democracy. We must stand up. We must have our voices heard. We must speak out. Martial law during my time, when I was a student, like many of you here, many years ago, was legal. The Supreme Court said so, but we opposed it anyway because it was unjust. I would like to get perhaps some of the questions. Will there be questions? No questions? Oh, that's most unfortunate. But in the end, public anger, righteous indignation expressed in and mobilized and organized manner is still the most lethal antidote to tyranny and abuse. And in the end, many of you are students here in the academe. I remember my own daughter, Frankie. She has, among the millennials, I am known now as Frankie's father, rather than she being my daughter. I was an activist in the Marcos regime during the Marcos dictatorship. Now I understand how my father feels. Frankie has been subjected to bashing, trolling, even death threats because of her outspokenness in the last several months. But she is, I guess, her father's daughter. But in her, I see the hope. In her, I see that there is hope for our nation. Among you, the young people, the students and youth, you will take the cudgels and defeat tyranny and abuse. Magandang umaga po sa kanilang lahat at maraming salamat.